right, welcome to Torqued Up Off-Road. Today we got the 2023 Can-Am Defender XMR Max. It was making a squeaking sound when we were driving, so about 2 months ago we jacked it up, spun the tires, took the tires off, see if the squeaking was coming from brakes or wheel bearings, and determined that it was the carrier bearing on the drive shaft. So I'm just going to go over real quick if anyone's had this issue before or has the issue now and wants to see how to do it. I can show you. So what we did was we bought a new, this is what your carrier bearing looks like. One side you'll notice is kind of sealed. You'll see like it's more sealed rubber around it. That side goes towards the front. This side, as you can see, not quite as sealed in there. That goes towards the back. And then some 3/16 rivets you can get off Amazon for real cheap. I'll go underneath and show you real quick. So I jacked the front up right out of in the air. I jacked the rear up. The rear wheels aren't off the ground, but it's jacked up for the suspension because I live in New York and it's winter time right now. We got snow outside, so it's not a fun job to do, but I will attempt to show you here. All right, so here's where your carrier bearing is. It's right about in the middle of the machine. I already took the bolts out, but it definitely had play in it and stuff. So there's two skid plates. They break like right here. There's a break skid plate there. There's rivets in every one of these. You got to drill out. They're not fun. You take like a 3/16 bit, rock it around, drill it out. Drop the skid plate down. Then I took the grinder because they were still stuck in there. Cut them off flush and then took a punch and just punched them inside the frame. So what I did here, which I'll tell most people, is I marked my shaft because this is a spline shaft here that's going to slip out of this yoke, and I wanted it to go back in the same spot. So I marked my shaft bottom here, so that way when I get it all taken apart, I can get it back in there. These bolts here, there's only two bolts that hold this on. They're 15 millimeter bolts. They come in from the top. I will say they are not fun. There's not a lot of room in here to move a ratchet around. What I did was I took my propane torch. I heated up the bolt because they weren't moving, and then I put a little pressure on them and heated them up a little more, and they ended up coming right out with heating them up. And then I put my little air ratchet on it instead of sitting here doing one click at a time. I used that once I got them loose to get them out. So the next thing to get this out is you have to get this carrier bearing to drop down. When it does, this yoke will kind of slide out. Then there's a little E-clip in there. I'll show you once I get it out that you got to take out with a pair of E-clip pliers. Your new one will go on, then it all goes back in. But let me get this down and then I'll show you a little more. Okay, so that rear prop shaft will pull right out once you get that undone. Then you can kind of get to where you can work on it. You'll see there was a little E-clip that was holding this on. Fits right in this groove here on that shaft. I'm just going to clean the shaft up with just a little bit of some paper. It's not too bad. Just going to clean that off of there. Put a little grease back on it. And then I'll reassemble this. And basically what we'll do is we'll put the new carrier bearing over it. Like I said, make sure the sealed side goes towards the front of the machine. I believe that's so that, mud doesn't pack into the front, and the back kind of open and lets the water and mud kind of get out of there. I didn't go with a crazy aftermarket that's greasable. I wasn't planning on really doing this. These were fairly cheap. The aftermarket ones were somewhere between 100 and 150. I think this one was like $40. Probably should after all this work, but I figure the next time I replace it, I'm going to do all the U-joints on this machine. So I'll just do all that at once because I got to drill all the skid plates out again. So let me get this all back together. We'll get it ready to put up. When I took this carrier bearing out, obviously it was like this. You can flex it a little to get it around those brackets underneath, and then it'll just drop straight down. That's how you get those shafts out. And then, like I said, the yokes just pull right apart. The biggest thing is I just want to make sure that they go back in the same way they were out. So that's going to be our next thing once we get it all back together. All right, so that's back in. Took about 30 seconds. Like I said, you can just flex this. You get one side flexed around this bracket, the other side you just spin it and it drop right down. I did it 2 or 3 times to make sure my lines were lined back up. I don't know necessarily that it's a huge deal, but I like to put things back together the way they came apart. So now there's 2 bolts that need to go back in these 2 holes. Tighten those down real good. And then you put your skid plate back on with 3/16 rivets and you're good to go. Not a whole lot to it, but it's definitely not fun when you're laying on your back doing it underneath a muddy machine. The floor is about 15 degrees. You know, it's cold outside. Ideally, I'd like to have it on a lift, or if I ever did this again at camp, I said I'd go over to a tree and then I'd tilt the machine at a 45-degree angle on its side, or pick the front straight up in the air on a tree and do it that way. That would be the ideal way, but we don't always get to work in ideal conditions. So until next time, there's your carrier bearing replacement on a 2023 Can-Am Defender XMR Max. Thank you, and stick around for more.